I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. Seeing no one else recording the meeting, if you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will start off with some special recognitions this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've shared with you some news over the past couple of meetings regarding the Auburn High cheerleaders. And they did extremely well, as you know. They went into the state Division II. I heard from the head coach, Caitlin Saw, and they placed 8th in the state level, which really is very remarkable. So I just wanted to give them kudos for their hard work throughout the season.
Excellent. Any comments?
Great job. He's always making Auburn proud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great job, girls.
Keep up the good work.
And we don't have any citizens' comments, so I would seek approval of the minutes of March 2nd.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes for March 2nd.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. It is a vote. And seeing no student representatives, I think we'll skip that report and move on to the, do you have any word from the students? Or?
I don't. We
Okay.
don't have any. We'll reach out to them. I know they're both extremely involved, both with work and school commitments, but we'll find out. It's been a bit.
What's up? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
So Senator Moore will be joining us at some point, but with your approval, I'll go to the other items in my report. The first one is we were outreached by a young woman who was a senior, psychology major at Union College in Schenectady, New York. And she is interested in conducting a mini research project as part of her senior thesis. And what she'd want to do is a very brief survey of 5th and 6th grade students. She would read them a scenario that took place on the schoolyard. And her intention is really to find out, if different incidents happen in school, oftentimes unstructured environments, is it simply just an ambiguous event that perhaps was an accident, or perhaps is it bullying? So I had a conversation with Mrs. Lopez and with Mr. Gagnon about this, and both of them were in favor of doing this. The students would be confidential. There'd be no names on any of the surveys. It would be aggregated data only. And the reason that we thought that this made sense was we're always looking for ways to be sure that we are in fact providing a safe environment. So I just wanted to make you aware, permissions would go home to parents. They'd need to sign off. It would explain that there's no names to be involved. If a parent chooses not to, simply indicate that and there's no issue. We'll take about 15 minutes to complete the whole activity. So it will be done during 5th and 6th grade classes. And then also the students on that day, if they decide they don't want to do it, they have an opt-out as well. So, and the good thing is we'll get a report about it. So we thought it was a win-win for us.
Any comments, Ms.
Yeah, I
Harrington?
just have a question. What's her connection to Auburn?
She actually outreached me. She was a former student of mine when I was a principal at Burgess in Sturbridge. And because she's from the Central Mass area, but out in Schenectady, New York, what she's hoping to do is do it during her March break. She really had, no real connections out there. So when she outreached me, I said, well, I will check with the principals and see if there's interest in it. So that's how it happened.
Seems simple enough.
Not that I look old enough to have a senior in college. I was a student.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Thank you. The next item, just wanted to share with you, we're always seeking ways to really try to collaborate with other departments within the community, really for the benefit of the entire community. So the Auburn school nurses are working with the Auburn Board of Health, and their intention is to put on a presentation regarding concussions and injuries that can be sustained and the importance of those. It really has become a high priority topic over the past few years, as I'm sure you've seen, so I think it will be a welcomed presentation, and just wanted to make you aware that that will be happening. No date yet set, but hopefully sometime this spring. I also wanted to make you aware you were supportive of us starting a unified track team this after the bocce tournament that was held in the fall. So we did receive the schedule from them, and wanted you to know that there will be one home meet. It will be on Monday, April 25th. They've got a half dozen games planned, and then there's actually a tournament that they may potentially qualify for. Last I checked, there were about 30 students who were interested in being a part of the program. So I think it really will be a great event, and hopefully there'll be lots of people who will show up for it that day. And I will give you a reminder of an upcoming one. I believe it's scheduled to begin at 3:30, but I'll let you know specifically.
Okay, excellent. Look forward to that. Any comments?
Through the chair at the Special Olympics this weekend, they made an announcement and the crowd went wild when they started talking about the Unified Track. So there's been a lot of positive buzz.
Yeah.
It was just really great to see the community so excited to have another unified sporting event. So,
Yeah, it's great.
So
It's good.
it was good.
Having not been able to attend the Special Olympics this year, it'd be great to be able to get out and
Yeah.
take part in this.
Mm.
Do they need any help or volunteers, or they have everything pretty
They
much
do have
handled
coaches
that
and,
way?
and volunteers and things, I can certainly check, but there's been a lot of excitement around it from everybody, so I think it will be really well received.
That's excellent. Great program. We now move on to unfinished business.
So you had requested at the last meeting for balances regarding free cash and stabilization. So Mrs. Worsbicky actually reached out to the town CFO, Mr. Kazanovich, and what you have in your packet is actually a couple of documents that he shared with us. The first one, so the value actually of the free cash, and this was certified as of October 6th of 2015, is $7,502,355. The balance in the town stabilization, and this was as of March 3rd, was $2,241,192.39. So additionally, a couple of documents were shared, a few of them here. One of them, and they actually outline the purpose or intention of these, gives a little bit of an explanation about free cash, stating that it's the term used for surplus funds that are available for appropriation, and then the stabilization fund that is used for, as it indicates here, for long-term financial stability. These graphs do not show the current values, but they're ones that were on hand. The values that we reported are the ones that I noted here. It goes on to say that free cash should be maintained at no less than 2.5% or more than 8% of general fund operating. And then for stabilization, another piece too, it's the goal of the town to achieve the fund at no less than 5% of general fund operating revenues. There is additionally, you can actually see the document that was received back on October 6th from DOR, the Department of Revenue, certifying the balance, which is noted actually in the superintendent's memo, as well as a report pulled from Munis that shows the value that's in the free cash account. So I just wanted to share that information with you.
Any comments, questions regarding this report?
Just thank you for getting it. I mean,
Well, I got a lot of money when we were only looking for, was it
57 and some
158
change.
thousand, and I don't see why we couldn't appropriate it from there or appropriate it from somewhere instead of dictating every time we come to budget hearings. The town is the ones that are telling us what we can do and what we can't do. I know we talked about the electricity being an offset. I understand that for this year and possibly next year, there may be an offset. But the thing, once them offsets go away, you're not gonna have that money to cover this. So we can't, so that's my problem. If you're taking out the funding now and you're gonna need it later, you're gonna have an uphill battle and you don't know what's gonna occur in the next 3 years in your budget stream. And that's my scenario. Part of it. I just don't want to drag on the meeting all night.
No, that was good. And I would just, shall I say counter, or just put in my 2 cents, and that's when you say the town, I believe the town is being led by the Board of Selectmen and Finance, just as we sort of provide direction for the school committee. So it's not one or two people who are behind this idea of putting this cash away. And then I would just caution that if they did throw us the 157 and some change, whatever that number is, we haven't gotten to that yet, it'd be much appreciated. I would love that, and it would kind of shorten our discussions, and we wouldn't be at odds at this meeting or the previous meetings. But again, as I mentioned last time, should they throw us that 157 and some change, there's going to be someone at the door the very next day looking for 200 and some change, and then someone's going to come in the next day and say, well, I want 100,000 of that free cash. So it's just not that easy of a decision for them or the people who are directing them, because frankly that money could go away very quickly once they start to once they open up that vault. And that's my point. Wayne?
And I'll take your point into consideration too, George, but I think the real thing I'm looking at is down the road, when we're gonna need the money, they're gonna have to be there to give us the money, do what we need to do. We have cut and cut and cut on this school committee over this year, and the final number came out. It didn't come out from from us, it came from the town. So they dictated what money we're gonna get, George. That's my problem. Nah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, I didn't think I would ever say this, but I agree with you. In the respect that in a couple of years, once this this kickback that we got back from National Grid has gone away, I will be right beside you, and we will do whatever it takes to seek the funding that we need to keep our schools strong. And mark my words, I will be right there with you, and I'll say we've given, and we're always transparent in doing so, but we're at the end of the line, and we'll take whatever measures that we need to make sure that we can recoup enough money to cover what we've been covering with that National Grid money. I will say that. Dorothy?
And through the chair, my concern is actually, I am concerned, I echo both of your sentiments, but my concern comes more from the fact that we are also, we've kind of willingly forfeited those CIP funds. And so if anything happens with where we're going in the next couple of years, we won't have a cushion in our operating budget, and we're talking about buildings that continue to age. So I know we've got, sometimes you have to just take one for the team and for the good of the town, but I mean, that's a reality, that the buildings aren't getting any younger, and they've already asked us to make a pretty big sacrifice in terms of CIP funding. So I'm concerned.
Well,
But if this is how we have to.
and I agree with you as well, and we should be concerned. And next year, and more so the following year, we are going to have to kind of put our nose to the grindstone and figure out a way that we are going to get money, and we'll do that. And I'm confident that the residents have always been there for us. So whatever it takes at that point, if we have to sit in front of the residents and we have to sit in front of town meeting in a couple of years and say,
Right.
we've given and that's the end of it.
Right.
But as long as we can sort of get along this year and next year with what we've reaped through the National Grid kickback, I think we'll be okay. And providing the guidance that the leadership team has given Dr. Brunel and Dr. Brunel has passed along to us, I feel pretty comfortable with it. That could change next year based on what we get from the state or whatever else whatever financial problems we may incur. But right now I don't feel too bad about it. When the time comes, I'll be right there aside of all of you. And I am confident that the town's going to step up and they're going to help us out and direct us as far as where to get that money. Wayne?
I still have it in me that, we're being dictated on what our budget's gonna be every year. We put our teams together with the finance and superintendent and the assistant superintendent. And every time we do it, we cut it 3, 4, 5 times. and we get to the bare bones, and we go even more. So, I mean, and then have the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and them tell us what our budget's gonna be, I think it's wrong. And that may be a personal thing with me, but I stick to that. And I want to thank you for hearing me.
Okay. Any other comments? And thank you, Cecilia, for getting that report, and thank you to the town for getting us some accurate documents that we could discuss. Much appreciated. So would we like to go back and welcome
I think so.
Senator Moore? Senator Moore, welcome. Good evening.
Also, we have
I actually went to the new school, assuming that you probably would have moved to a new location.
Okay, so,
So I'm running, they got basketball going on, I'm running around, I said, where's the school committee?
We'll have to give you a map, Mike.
We're at home here.
Well, I
You got a nice
I had
curtain.
5 West Street, so I said, isn't this 5 West Street? They said, yeah, the whole complex is. I'm like, okay. So, well, thank you for allowing me to come tonight. As you know, we're at the very beginning stages of the budget process. The governor filed his budget. The House right now, the House and Senate, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means has been going around the state conducting hearings. The House should be releasing their budget, I believe the first or second week of April, and the Senate will release ours the first or second week of May. Is that better? Okay. And then hopefully by the end of May we'll have the Senate budget will be complete, and then it will go to conference committee. There has not been any talk right now of a local aid resolution. So hopefully as the House, as they release their budget, hopefully we can start getting more information whether we're going to have a resolution or not. The fiscal year budget of House 2, which is the governor's budget, for the town of Auburn was $1,646,647. The final budget last year from the state was $1,578,760. So there's a difference of about $67,887 over last year's budget. The governor's fiscal 17 budget, again, which is called House 2, proposes to increase unrestricted general government aid, that's municipal aid to the municipal side of government, by $42 million over the current fiscal year 2016 levels to $1.2 billion, and that's an increase of 4.3%. The state's ability to fund the general local aid has been impacted by a series of significant state-level tax cuts during the 1990s and 2000, combined with obviously the Great Recession that we all went through. While over the past several years, general local aid funding has increased with or slightly above inflation, it still remains 41.4% below the fiscal year 2001 figures. The governor's proposed budget would reduce funding for the Municipal Regionalization and Efficiencies Incentive Fund reserve to $5.6 million. This marks a 48.1% reduction from the amount that had already been reduced, $3 million, as a result of the governor's 9C budget cuts. In doing so, the fiscal year 2017 budget proposal would increase available funds from $2 million to $2.65 million for the Community Compact Program, incentive program, to be supported by local practices. Is everyone familiar with the Community Compact? Okay,
Yeah.
and the regionalization fund that, okay. Statewide, the governor's fiscal 2017 budget proposal increases Chapter 70 aid by $72 million to $4,584,008,961, which reflects an increase of about 1.6%. The governor's budget is based off a minimum of a $20 minimum per pupil increase, which is a reduction from previous budgets, which we based it at a $25 per pupil minimum increase that was secured by the legislature in the previous years. So fiscal year 2017 for the town of Auburn, the governor's House 2 budget is $8,792,968. And the final for Auburn for last year was $8,448,392. So it's a difference of $344,576. The governor's fiscal year 2017 budget places the Auburn Public School enrollment at approximately 2,387 students, okay, which marks a stable trend in enrollment size, fluctuating between 2,300 to 2,400 students since 2008. The governor's fiscal 2017 budget sets the Auburn Public Schools Foundation budget at $23,122,124, which is a $478,298 increase over fiscal year 2016. The district's net minimum contribution within House 2 is set at $14,329,156, which is a decrease of $65,578 over fiscal year 2016. The House 2 Chapter 78 to the district, however, is expected to rise by $340,000 to $344,576 over fiscal year 2016. This does reflect a continuing trend in gradual increases over the last several years. The district has not yet experienced a decrease in Chapter 70 funding since before 2007. Chapter 70 aid in 2007 was $4,305,255, nearly half of what the fiscal 2017 projections are. Dollars spent per enrollment continues to increase at a modest rate. In fiscal year 2015, $12,408 was spent per enrollment, $3,585 of which was subsidized through Chapter 70 funding. Required net school spending for 2017, again, is at $23,122,124, which is a $278,998 increase over fiscal year 2016. In fiscal year 2016, state education dollars funded approximately 37.3% of the district's foundation budget, which translates to about 29.4%. Throughout the state, district foundation budgets were calculated by using updated enrollment and inflation data. Notably, the key inflation factor for the Chapter 70 in fiscal 2017 was slightly negative at a minus 0.22%. The governor's fiscal 2017 budget proposes increasing Chapter 70 aid by $72.1 million, again, which is a 1.6% increase over the last year, for the total funding of $4,558 billion. This proposed increase is 35% less than the $111.2 million increase from fiscal year 2015 to 2016. Recently, myself and a group of senators all recently signed a letter asking Senate Ways and Means to possibly look at funding the per pupil increase, increasing it from what's recommended in the governor's budget from $20 to a $50 increase per student. Again, that's just a request that we made. I wouldn't hold out so much hope that we would come close to that, but anything above the $20, if we can get back to the $25 or $30 would be helpful. If we were to accomplish that, this request would increase the budget by about $20.2 million over the current budget. the governor's budget. The governor did, actually, in my Senate district, I actually, Bay Path, Blackstone Valley, Assabet, Worcester, I actually have 4 vocational schools that my school district feed. And there's probably about 1,500 to 2,000 students who are on waiting lists. So the administration has recently announced with the budget an $83.5 million increase for vocational equipment. This will offset some of the costs for the member towns within the vocational school district. The funding is derived from a mixture between fiscal 2017 budget funding and bond funding authorized by the legislature, or that would have to be authorized by the legislature. $75 million over 5 years would go to new capital authorization to fund grants for equipment to expand and improve technical education programs, building on a $9.2 million skills capital grant program announced this year. $7.5 million would go to work-based learning grants, including nearly doubling support for school to career connecting activities to $5.5 million, and doubling support for the dual enrollment program to $2 million. To expand and replicate STEM-focused early education career pathways, including school curriculum and workplace experience and learning. There would also be $1 million that would go to new career technical partnership grants funded through the Federal Perkins Act grant funding to strengthen the relationship between vocational schools and comprehensive schools and employers. The governor's budget also uses a new economically disadvantaged measure for counting low-income students. This means this measure essentially uses the number of kids directly certified for school meals instead of using the free and reduced priced meal headcounts used to date. However, this new economically disadvantaged measure identifies many fewer low-income students than does the traditional free and reduced price meal application process. Is anyone interested in charter schools?
Do you mean, do we want to start one, or do we want to hear
Well,
about
there's information on charter
Why not?
schools. Well, actually, I guess that would be nice to know the opinion of the committee as far as, are you in favor or in opposition to charter schools?
I would have to say that we are not as a committee, and anyone could step in and put in their 2 cents, but we have had discussions around this, and we actually drafted a letter stating our disapproval.
Okay.
So whether or not we'd like to hear about charter schools, probably not. I think,
Well, the current status, not to get into the governor's bill, the current status of the charter schools is the governor filed legislation to lift the cap, and there are certain aspects of his bill that are very controversial. The House is not going to address charter school legislation until the Senate does. Because if you recall, last year, the legislative session, the Senate was the one that drafted legislation that went against what was drastically different than what the House had proposed, and went to conference committee, and it died in conference. So they basically left it to the Senate to put forth a bill regarding lifting the cap. All the conversations that the Senate has had, Senate President has met with every senator, found out what the issues are that we would need to address, and that goes from the funding to local option, to making it more mandatory as far as the charter schools not being able to easily send students back the way the lottery is conducted. That if a piece of legislation were to come out of the Senate regarding charter schools, it would have a lot of major reforms to the current system. And the reforms that we would probably be recommending would most likely not be accepted by the House. So with the remaining, we end formal session July 31st. Where are we now, March? So April, May, June, July, so remaining 4 months. I'd be very surprised if you saw well, I won't be surprised if you saw something come out of the Senate, but I'd be very surprised if it didn't contain a lot of these reforms to make it acceptable to the senators. But I don't think it's anything that the House would accept. So one aspect aspect that stands out in that we're all familiar with MSBA funding, correct? The beautiful school that I just walked through. The administration would like to make MSBA funding open to charter schools, which, yeah. And my opinion is we already have limited resources for our traditional public schools, because charter schools are still public schools. I think that's a sticking point for a lot of us in the Senate. And also, I'm a very vocal supporter, right, for making a local choice. I think that if we're going to have a charter school come in, and one just tried to come in Shrewsbury a few months ago, it's my opinion that the school districts that would be the feeding students of that charter school, each one of those school districts should have either the school committee or the residents of that community should have to vote whether they want to be included in that, because it is their local property taxes and state Chapter 70 money going into the schools. So I know that the charter school advocates are adamantly opposed to any sort of local choice. So that's where we are.
Send a letter
Right.
in opposition to it.
So
If I could make one comment.
Gail?
Mr. Moore, I'm a longtime Auburn teacher, now retired, and after charter schools came in, some of our students went that route, and I personally saw on my team students that came back to us and would have a meeting with the parents, because usually they were special needs, and the mother would inform us that the reason they're back in Auburn is because the charter school told the parents that they really couldn't meet their child's needs, and why don't they go back to their public school. And I mean, that happened enough so that I'm very leery of charter schools.
And usually that conversation occurs in the charter school after October 1st, because that is the deadline where
It was kind of
yeah,
mid-year.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Because once you get past that date, the charter school gets to retain
Credit
the
for the
funding
student.
for the entire year. So that's one of the funding issues that we also have. That's predominant throughout the Senate.
Yeah.
If you actually look at the main support for charter schools are really coming from 5 or 6 communities, and they're really Boston-centric. It's actually the city of Boston. You have Lawrence, and schools and some other communities near Boston, and they do have a record of success in some of these schools, and they're very high minority student populations there that are doing very well. The Lawrence schools were turned around. I mean, so they can be successful, but it's got to have the local support. But because I guess the issue is that because it works in Boston or those areas, doesn't mean it's going to work across the state. Massachusetts and Boston and Worcester County and Springfield are all different. We all have different demographics, different needs. So what's working there doesn't necessarily have to be the model that we should have to follow. So, I lost my train of thought. There was something else, but
Well,
on the charter schools.
hopefully, once that once that paperwork gets through the Senate, it doesn't look much like it did when it went in. Is what I'm understanding may happen as far as charter schools and what support the Senate will offer. It sounds like that document's going to be changed up quite a bit.
It should be. There's Senator Linda Dorsina-Fori and Senator Pat Jalen are the two that are taking on the effort to attempt to draft something. So we'll see. like the vote that took place last year on charter schools, there was not a lot. I mean, it was close. I mean, the Senate was pretty much evenly divided on the issue. So in this year, I think you see more, and there's more of an more senators who are leery of the current system or the current setup of charter schools. Actually, I just remember I was going to say several of the senators who have been there since the original drafting of charter schools. A lot of their issues with it is that the original intent of the charter school was to allow for the schools, and if there were best practices that were developed in these schools, to then have those and bring them over to the traditional K through 12 school, which has never happened. So we do have a lot of senior senators who have issues now that our communities are being made to choose between the two, and yet even though some of the schools are performing well, the purpose of the charter school initiative never really met that purpose. So.
Any comments, questions for Senator Moore? Wade?
I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you for coming out tonight and giving us all these numbers and stuff, so we have a little knowledge. I mean, we don't listen to the numbers and everything every single day, but it's nice to see you come out here and inform us on what's going on, and I want to thank you for that. And then I want to thank you for doing all the service that you do for the town of Auburn, because I know you're everywhere.
Oh,
You're
thank you.
everywhere, and
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it, and there's many people I know that appreciate it in this town, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you. The only thing I wish is that I could actually give you Senate numbers rather than the governor's numbers. So
Well, can't you make Mike more fun for us?
we'll start tomorrow.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. And actually, I can give you this so you can have notes. I saw you're writing everything down. So it's nice seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much. To the chair, if I could just say, echo Mr. Page's remarks. Senator Moore is always a great friend of the schools and very supportive of us coming to events and advocating on behalf of our students. So I do want to thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Have a nice
Have a
night.
good evening.
Mary Ellen, could you get us a copy of
Sure.
that? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was writing down on my own.
Back to
Yeah, I did the same thing. on the next
unfinished business and the draft budget.
So what we have before you to continue the discussion a bit that happened just prior to Senator Moore's arrival, we were asked to go back and put together some potential additional reductions. And what we did, we were waiting actually until we actually saw the National Grid bill in hand with the credit actually on there, and can tell you that we do in fact have that credit. So we are able, if with your approval, to make an additional reduction from, it would actually come from next year's textbook line, because we would purchase those due to the reduction that we're receiving in this year's budget. But I would add, as I put on the backside of the actual budget reduction document, it really does deserve a word of caution, and for all of us, should you go this route, for us to keep in mind. This money was unanticipated funds that we received from the National Grid rebate. We knew we were getting a rebate, we were not sure through what avenue we would receive it. So the fact that it has come to us as a credit gives us an opportunity to make a reduction in a budget that will not have a negative impact on next year's. We'll get the exact textbooks that we were intending to get. But the caution is that in next year's budget, you'll recall, we've already used a full offset for the electricity charge at Auburn Middle School. So that's a zero base there. In the following year, and again, we're still continuing to calibrate, we don't have, with our other schools, we could tell you about what it costs to use electricity for a school year. We've not yet been through a full school year with our new middle school. So, we're guesstimating it's somewhere between $160,000 and $195,000, and that's based on recommendations and input from the architect based on square footage and such. But eventually, this National Grid rebate is going to run out, and everyone is going to need to remember that our base, we're going to need to put that back in, whether it's in 18 partially, certainly by 19, but that $160,000 to $195,000, which equates to about 0.7% increase over our current fiscal budget, that's gonna need to be added that very first year. And that's just gonna be for utilities, just for basic services. So that's the caution. We've been given an opportunity, and as I think, that's speaking to Mr. Page's point, but then also to Mr. Scobie's, that this was unanticipated funds. So I think there's a way for us to reduce to this level and not negatively impact kids, so long as we remember in 18 or 19 that money is going to need to be restored, because that rebate will run out. We will eventually use it in its entirety.
I would entertain a motion to approve the FY 2017 budget as printed in your memo.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017 budget at $23,825,968.26.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I just echo the caution that Dr. Bernal stated as well. And again, I just can't reiterate how much we are setting ourselves up. I agree, we have it, we should do it. But if our operating budget is then meant to absorb the lack of CIP funds and we have to recoup 0.7%, it sounds like it sounds very small, but I think we were arguing last year over something like 0.5%, 0.05%. It was very small and it was tough. It was a matter of $8,000 and we couldn't get it. So this is, I'm concerned, but
We're okay for now.
right.
Any other comments? I would just go back to what I said earlier, and that is, when the time comes and this National Grid money goes away, and we got to put our nose to the grindstone, that's exactly what we'll do. And if the town, I don't want to say the town, if the town does not support us in that endeavor, then we'll go to whatever measures necessary to make that happen. Because, as I said, Dr. Bernal and leadership has made us, or at least made me feel somewhat comfortable with what's happening this year and next year based on the money from National Grid. Beyond that point, whatever we have to do to recoup that. And again, I'm confident because the residents have always stood by us. And whether it means the money comes from free cash or whether it comes from some other source, I think that time and time again it's been proven that they have our back, and I'm sure they will again. And publicly, I will state that we will be looking for that money. It's just we cannot continue this way. Wayne?
I know the residents support us. It's some of the town officials and the dictation of the budget money is what bothers me the most. This town, as far as the residents goes, have been awesome. Look at how much they have given us over the years for our students. And that's why I'm so adamant to keep trying to fight to make sure we keep it rolling. But being dictated to what we're gonna do bothers me. And if we didn't have the electricity money, you would have had to cut even more. And you cut prior to this cut to get to what their number was. They want. That's it. Thank you.
Any further comments?
I can go along with this knowing that in the future, if we do need money, the town will be there to fight with us, because we will fight for the students in the schools.
We can say we will be there, sorry to interrupt you,
No, it's,
say that the town will be there, but that doesn't mean the town's gonna be there, as far as the officials go. Because they haven't been with us with our budget as it is now in the past few years.
yeah,
They've been dictating our budget, and we keep cutting.
well,
That's my point,
Mhm.
Gail.
yeah, okay. But if we have to appeal to the people and make noise, we can do that.
Right. No, I agree to that one, and they have been very good to us.
We're not going to go into a school year undermanned,
No, we're not.
underfunded. It's just
We're not gonna start cutting programs, no way.
If Dr. Bernal and the leadership team
Won't that happen?
came in and said, we just can't run the schools that the students aren't gonna get the education that they deserve this year.
That's right.
That's all we have to hear.
Yeah.
And we'll go to town meeting and we'll go through whatever avenues we have to make something happen. So, I feel good about going into this year. Don't feel great about it, but feel good about it. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One opposed.
Thank you. The next item, just wanted to remind you that our public hearing will be on April 6th. We had postponed that with Senator Moore's arrival tonight, so with a budget number in hand, we will send out tomorrow. I put in your packets a draft letter. We will fill in the blanks on there based on the vote that you have just taken, inviting town meeting members as well as town's administration, select board of orders, and finance committee to the public hearing, and that will be held at Auburn High School.
And that'll be the auditorium, yeah.
In the auditorium, Auburn High School in the auditorium.
Okay.
Additionally, I just wanted to share, we only have scheduled one meeting in April 6th, which will be our public hearing. I didn't know whether, and this may not be an issue now because the budget that you have voted reflects exactly what the town manager is recommending. But if you wanted to schedule an additional meeting in April and then decide at the April 6th meeting whether we needed it, I leave that up to the committee for your discussion. The town meeting will be May 3rd.
It certainly couldn't hurt to schedule it, and we
Yeah, I
don't
think
need
it's
to
a
hold
good
it.
idea to schedule it. Then if you get to it close enough and you don't need it, then
Okay.
so be it.
Well, I would entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
This is a vote.
And then additionally, we generally schedule a meeting just prior to town meeting at 6:30 in the guidance office. We just reserve that room if you're so inclined to do so again. I would accept, we could coordinate that.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
This is a vote.
The next item, you had voted back a few months ago, a request had come forward, there was an abutter to property that abuts actually the Packagug School, who was interested in potentially purchasing that property. If you recall, you took a vote based on Mr. Fahey's and my recommendation to ask the town to maintain that as town property and not to sell it. The reason being that it would allow for should there ever be a decision to expand the Packagug School, it would give that much more land to be able to do so. That memo went to the town manager. She had just shared some additional information and just wanted to be sure that you were aware of it. Whether you wish to change your vote or leave it as is certainly up to you. The assessed value of the combined properties is $44,900, as she indicates. It is not known whether the abutter would be interested in paying the assessed value for the property or even what it could be sold for, if it were to go to auction, if a minimum bid was set. She did indicate that it could potentially generate revenues and would put the property back on the tax rolls, thus generating annual real estate taxes. But again, based on Mr. Fahey and my review of it, the topography is fairly steep, particularly in one area. But again, the original reason for our recommendation was to provide that opportunity that I know there are no immediate plans to expand Packagug School, but it would be available should you ever wish to do so, or a future school building committee.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the town manager that the town remain the owner of the land abutting the Packagug School.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do just want to remind everyone that bus applications for next school year have been out now for some time and are due June 1st.
And we now move on to new business.
The next item, Mr. Davis, our athletic director, As you'll recall, last year you gave approval for the Auburn High fields. Most other fields were under feet of snow, and ours being the turf field, we could plow it off and such. We don't have that issue this year. However, there are a couple of local colleges that do not have home fields for their practices. So Mr. Davis has put together a memo, and Quinsigamond Community College is interested in renting our fields. Mr. Davis did the calculations that if at the $250 an hour rate, and this, any fees additionally for lights if they use it at night would be their responsibility as well. But his recommendation is to put together a package deal, so to speak, that for a 45-day period, it would basically be starting around about the last week in March and ending the first week in May. So long as, and Mr. Davis actually schedules all of the high school events, the middle school events, and works with town officials in terms of approving community use of it, would be to charge $10,000 to Quinsigamond. Mr. Davis would serve as the site manager for the games and practices, so we would have someone there. Any lights that would be needed would be billed at the $50 an hour rate. Quinsigamond would supply the line for lining of the fields. If the Parks Department or the Town Department for the lining, they would pay for any time. If there was overtime required, they would provide proof of insurance and obviously complete the facility use form based on the policy that you have set. So what we would do with these funds, as we did last year, we actually have a field revolving account, and it would allow for some monies to be in there should any small repairs need to be made to those. So I share this with you for your consideration to start this year in March. It'll be just for this year.
Any discussion? Wayne?
What if there's excessive damage done? Is that the college going to pay for that?
So what we
Do we
would,
have a-
they actually have to provide an insurance binder. So, and that's part of the use policy that the school committee has set. With Mr. Davis, they're serving as site manager. He'd be available, which I think is an asset too, is to be able to inspect the field.
Right, so somebody will be there
Correct,
to know.
yes.
And does this take away from the life of our fields by doing this?
So I think, in terms of the use of the field is Mr. Fahey, and he'll be coming at an upcoming meeting to report. Due to the maintenance that's been on them, we're really extending the life, of the fields beyond what they had originally thought. Actually, in the
Right.
CIP in an upcoming year, we're going to be replacing the infield with turf, because right now it's what you would see on a normal field. So I don't believe that, this 1 year of it would excessively impact it negatively. And I think the reason, should you approve this, is we would do this as a trial and then
Okay.
assess it and see. And if there were any issues or concerns, we're not obligated beyond this year if you were to agree to this year.
Right, well, that's good to know, because, it's still our students and
Correct.
our residents' fields. We don't want to get into the problem of having
Correct.
different out-of-town people coming in and making it worse than what it is, and then we have to go down and ask for
Right.
money, 100,000 or whatever it is, to replace things because of the wear and tear.
Right. I agree.
Thank you.
Saracen?
I have a major concern just because you bring in that many people and their families and siblings. I'm worried about the overflow. We already have basketball courts that are, our own residents can't use them because people come from surrounding towns. So I'm worried about the tennis courts, the basketball courts, and the playground. Not so much just the baseball field. It's the overflow, the track, everything else that will also take the wear and tear from bringing in so many people. So
That's a good point.
I don't think I would support this.
I would have to say that not a lot of people go to these collegiate games, especially when you're talking about Quinsig. I understand your concern, but I would be very surprised if there was a quarter of the we'll call them fans, as you would see at an Auburn High baseball game, where you may have some families and some people running around. And I haven't gone down to any of the games, but I used to go to the Quincy games when they were taking place up on the Quincy campus, as well as other college games. And you'd pretty much be the only person watching that game. So I could be wrong.
Depends on who they were playing.
They're playing another
Junior college.
junior college, and it's not to take anything away from them. It's collegiate ball. I just don't see a lot of people attending these events, but I certainly understand your concern. It's a one-time thing. We have had other colleges down there, and I haven't heard of anything, any type of issues.
No, I wasn't aware of any that happened last year. There were a few different colleges that used it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only difference here is we would have one college coming in on a regular basis, which is probably going to be a little bit better, as they form a relationship with our athletic director, as well as Mr. Fahey, and I think if they enjoy their experience there, they're going to want to do the best they can to keep things on the up and up. Wayne?
And now that you're saying about other colleges, I just don't want to see a river of colleges coming to Auburn and play on our fields when we have our own students and residents that use these fields, and $10,000 is not going to help to repair a field if need be. I mean, we may have to go through insurance and the college and everything else, but that's just going to cause another big fireball. You know, I don't really see it myself.
I just think,
You know, resident.
I think for
And the
the
traffic and stuff, I think you're right about that.
I think for $10,000 in the short amount of time that they're going to be on the field, I think we would be able to recoup whatever maintenance fees were necessary out of that $10,000. I think it's I don't think the field is used all that much from the Auburn students. They have a short season, and there's certainly not a lot of wear and tear during practice. So I think it's an opportunity to make a few dollars while being able to put away some money into that maintenance fund for when the time comes when we need to resurface that field. I could be wrong, but I'm going to trust that Mr. Fahey has actually run those numbers. Gail?
I would just like to say, when I read the honor roll for Quincy College, a lot of it is Auburn. So I would think some of our own former students would be playing on these teams.
Sure.
So their own Auburn students, former Auburn students, Auburn families would be cheering them on, if anyone bothers to come. I mean, I don't see any harm in doing it on a trial basis.
And this was just informational? Or?
No, I would need your vote on that. Oh, okay, it's not a recommended motion, but it would require your approval in order to do that, the committee's approval.
Well, why don't we start with a recommendation, a motion, and we'll go from there, and we can have further discussion after it's seconded.
I can make a motion.
Gail, you-
All right, I make a motion that we allow Quincy Community College to rent our fields for $10,000 from the last week of March through the first week of May on a trial basis.
Do I have a second? Further discussion?
I hear my fellow committee members' concerns, but I think we at least, we talk so much about budget, we at least owe it to ourselves to see how it goes. I don't know what the contract would include, but if there's some sort of caveat where if, 10 days in it goes really, really poorly, that we can basically decline further use. I think that might kind of alleviate some of the stress, at least, so that we have a little bit of control other than just giving them carte blanche. Run it for 45 days, and then if it goes well, we consider it for the next year. If not, that's the end of that.
I think that's an excellent idea, and they could actually be refunded if things went that poorly. I really don't see that happening, but if it did happen, they could be refunded based on how many days they had already used the field, and we can certainly come up with those numbers before the contract is drawn up. Wayne?
I just say what I have to say is I think it's going to be like opening up a river and just having colleges from everywhere all around wanting to use our fields, and I'm very wary of it because we do have taxpayers that pay for these fields and residents. It's just hard to let outside people come in, not just because of college, but any group on the outside. You know, this is our schools for our children, and the residents paid for it and everything else. And I don't think $10,000 is a lot of money either way, whether you say it's for the budget or not the budget. I mean, it's still, it's still being used, no matter what, and things can happen. And I just don't, I feel like there's gonna be a big fireball over this whole thing, it's gonna escalate. I mean, the board wants to vote for it, that's fine, but I will not vote for it.
I would just say that the real question here is how much wear and tear is going to be done to the field versus how much money is being taken in for that 45-day period. That's the question. If Mr. Fahey is comfortable with whatever research he's done so far, I'm comfortable with it. It's only 45 days. This is not going to make or break us. This is not going to destroy the field in 45 days. We'll have their insurance binder. So again, it's a trial basis, and if this relationship was formed with Quincy, it wouldn't be necessary to even entertain any other colleges. They may be back again next year, and depending on how it goes, if there's little to no wear and tear on the fields, the parking lots are not being utilized, or the playgrounds. And again, I could be totally off base with that, but I just, in my experience, I was typically the only one at those games when my buddies were playing, so, or my buddies' children at this point. So I can't see anything wrong with this. It's a trial basis. So, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 2. 3 in favor, 2 opposed.
Thank you. The next item in terms of upcoming events, as happens every spring, there are a plethora of activities that are taking place. A couple to point out to you, all of them are important certainly. The senior class fundraiser, which is a big hit they did last year, is they're having a Disney breakfast on Saturday, March 26th up at the high school. We'll be presenting to the Finance Committee a week from tonight at Town Hall. Family Math Night, which is always a great event for the elementary schools, takes place at the high school from 5:30 to 7:30 on the 29th, and their middle school is hosting its first annual sports ceremony to recognize those students who have played sports this far this year. That taking place on the 31st of March. So just wanted to point those out to you, and obviously there's lots of other great things happening as well.
What is Auburn Middle School Hungry Hippo or Junior? Did you mention that?
I didn't mention that. I'm not exactly sure what that is, although I can tell you that there was a game that the teachers played one time that's called Hungry Hippo, and I'm not sure if it's that, but you put, my guess is this is with students, it's on a Thursday afternoon, and you hold the legs of your partner with their hands on the ground, and they have to crawl into the middle and I think put a ball into a bucket or so. It's some sort of a fundraiser. If it's through ARC, it's a fundraiser. So
Sorry I
you're
asked.
encouraged to check it out. I think that's what it is.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah, it will be,
I
I'm
don't know.
sure.
That should be a hoot to watch.
Oh, Friday the 1st, I'm sure it's that on
Yeah.
April Fool's Day, yes.
Hopefully there's no copyright infringement on the actual Hungry Hippo game. Perfect.
Actually, if I could just, through the chair, announce one more event. On Sunday, April 3rd, they're hosting the first, which I intend they intend to have an annual event, a Run for a Rocket, to raise money. And this year, the funds would be used to raise money for Nikki Berthume, who was injured quite heavily in a boating accident this past summer. So she continues to do well. I saw her recently at one of the sporting events, but that they will be raising that for her. And this is being led by Mr. Davis as well as Kathleen Lutz, who is assisting with that. It'll take place at Leminski Field, so you'll start to hear more about it. Nice event.
Excellent. Dorothy, you gonna run on that?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
It's important to know that Kathleen Lutz is actually directing the unified track and field
Hmm,
team
Right.
at Auburn High School.
Yeah.
So
She's awesome.
yeah.
really-
Thank you to Kathleen,
Yeah, absolutely.
and thank you for representing us so
No
that we
problem.
don't have to run. Lots of good things happening in Auburn.
Oh, last time I ran, I don't know.
We now move on to the teaching and learning report.
Okay, just wanted to update you and make you aware of a few items this evening. Recently, Mrs. Reedy, the Director of Pupil Services, and I were made aware that a grant we had written through the SHINE initiative was actually granted for $4,500. Their mission is really to raise awareness of mental illness in children and adults, and they do that by offering small grants to other organizations that can reach out and extend that work. So our grant funds will be used to provide some training for a select group of staff members around identifying mental health issues, as well as providing supports to our students. But then we'd also like to add a parent component to that as we work through that. You know, it's important to note that research tells us that approximately 1 in 5 students have a mental health condition that affects them as well as their family. And here in Auburn, we wrote the grant because we're starting to see an increase in students that really present as having a lot of depression and anxiety and school phobia. We're even noticing it as young as some of our preschool students. So we are thrilled that we have this additional funding because it's really a very complex and serious condition. So we're really working hard to address it in Auburn, and as we roll out some of that training and have some really expert speakers come in and work with our people, we'll give you an update on that.
Thank you.
In your packet, I think you saw the menu from our recent March Professional Development Day this past Friday. There were approximately 47 offerings this year for the whole day. Most of those offerings came from our own teachers who came forward to offer a session, which I give great kudos to because sometimes that can be intimidating. We did have some outside presenters that came in who were very, very well regarded by the staff who attended those sessions. The week before, however, I did find out that the keynote speaker had a medical emergency, and we had already put out the menu, so we didn't really have one at that point. But we did have a stand-in who they sent to us, and she turned out to be really dynamite. She was humorous, you know, she was engaging, and at the same time inspirational. So throughout the day, we heard that that was actually one of the best keynote speakers we've ever had. She came all the way from Texas. She had a great accent.
Wow.
And people really enjoyed her. Most of the feedback so far that we've looked at has been very positive about all of the workshops. And I just think it's important to note that not only do our own participants provide positive feedback to the presenters who come into Auburn then write to us and thank us and tell us how great that day was, how it was so professionally organized and handled, and that all of our staff members were so committed, engaged, and interested in what they had to offer. So I think that speaks very highly to Auburn as well. So nice that it goes both ways. And my final update is around the Ed-Eval. You know that we currently have an Ed-Eval committee. We've had that for approximately 3 years, and we work on various components of that tool. This year we're kind of focusing still on the DDMs, or the district determined measures, that can sometimes present some angst for teachers. We've been working on it for the last 2 years. So in regards to that and the angst that sometimes arises with that, Dr. Brunel and I plan to go out to the schools in the next few weeks, visit faculty meetings, do a presentation, review a lot of the information we had already shared with them, show them how the data will be used, and then answer any questions that they have, so moving forward they can become more and more comfortable with that piece. We're also working with Panorama, which is an organization last year that helped us to disseminate surveys to our teachers and our students around feedback on the administrators as well as on the teachers in the classroom. This year we had a great opportunity to work really closely with them to look at the content of the surveys. Last year we basically used DESI's models. Panorama has kind of tweaked some of those models, so we had choices, and we were able to really customize the ones we want to use for our staff and students, which was great. They will disseminate those, and then they will take the data, analyze it, and give various reports to all of the staff so that they can look at their own results of their students and then reports to principals as well regarding what the staff has to say about them, and we will see district level reports at our level. So we'll let you know more about that. We plan to do that the week of April 4th, so it's upcoming. And that's all I really have for you tonight. Unless you have some questions for me?
Any questions for Dr. Lozay?
I don't have any questions, just appreciate the update. It's really nice to hear kind of the nitty gritty of what's going on.
It's good.
Regarding the DDMs, Dr. Lozay, do we go by a certain format or framework for all departments, all teachers, at all levels? Or does everyone kind of put together their own numbers? As far as reaching the impact ratings and the percentages, I mean, do we have a certain number that we go with, or does it?
So we have a formula that we're using. We had Dr. Brady come in, who works for the Research for Better Teaching organization. She's worked for Teachers 21 and she's worked with DESE. So she has come in over the last 2 years at different, whether we've worked with just the administrators or we've worked with staff and department heads at the high school, and trained us all on how to use that formula. So it actually falls to the administrator in the building to take that data, apply that formula, which we will share with staff when we go out, so it's very transparent and they know how that process works.
Right.
And everybody will be the same standard by using that formula.
So the individual departments or teachers are not figuring out what the impact was as far as percentages. That's up to you. They just turn over whatever assessments that they used.
Yes, and collect the data. And they've identified their own assessments, aside from the ones that they are mandated to use through DESE, which is the park data.
Right.
They have identified the other district determined measures they will use. And most of those are ones that are currently being used in the district. We didn't want to have to recreate a wheel if we didn't have to,
Right.
Which I think they were thankful for. A lot of those are pre and post course kinds of assessments. So
Right. Excellent. I
we're in a
like
good
that.
place, I think, so far.
That sounds like it. I'd like to learn more about it, but we won't do that tonight.
Give Dr. Brunel and I can do the presentation for you sometime. How's that?
That sounds great.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, we now move on to business and financial.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I brought forward to you a year-to-date budget report. I took the opportunity to come again in March. This is my second meeting, but I wanted to add a few updates on transfers that I would like to get approved to bring the budget in line. So I presented in your packet an actual year-to-date budget, and I have a list of the transfers that I'd like to have approved as well.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer request as submitted by the business manager.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
There's a vote.
Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk about is the town's single audit. Every year, like as I've said to you before, we, at the school district, we do our end of the year report, and we're audited by the auditing group Scanlon and Associates. Well, the town is also required on a yearly basis to do a town single audit, which they basically audit the financial statements and the policies, and they examine all the funds. The school department is part of the town, so they look at the school funds as well. Mr. Kasanovitz provided me with a copy of the audit, which I have here. It's a big document that I'd be happy to share with any of you if you have any interest in it. But the one thing I did want to bring to your attention, a couple things. There were 2 recommendations in the management letter from the auditors with regard to the school department. So I did want to bring those to your attention. The first recommendation from the auditors pertaining to the school department was the separation of school choice funds. The government, we get school choice money in from the government every year that's put in a school choice revolving account. And as I came to 2 weeks ago, the meeting, we talked about separating those accounts from the regular school choice account, not commingling, because our teachers' contract allows for the teachers to bring in their students if it's approved. And so we were able to put those monies into a different account. So with your approval, I set that up with Mr. Kasanovitz. So that will be taken care of, but that was one of their recommendations. So that was the first one. The second one was a recommendation for both the town and the school personnel to get training on the new OMB circular regulations pertaining to the federal grants that we received, some of our federal funding like Title I, Title IIA, the 240, the IDA grant for special ed. They particularly, some of the new mandates are particularly regarding the awarding of contracts. And I'm happy to report that the town, they had recommended that the town and school personnel go to some trainings on that. I'm happy to report that myself and Cheryl Moran, my accounts payable person, who does also performs a lot of the grant management activities. We were in attendance at a MASBO training that they did in November. And we're looking at our procedures and trying to work on bringing them in line with the federal recommendations.
Wonderful.
So, any questions?
Do you feel those trainings were useful?
Yes, they were. They provided a lot of ideas and recommendations on how we can model our procedures after what, some of the towns presented some templates. So I'm looking at that and trying to model ours, and I'll probably be bringing that to you at some point later on down the road for your approval.
Good.
Do you think anyone else needs to attend that training or something similar as far as in the special
I
needs
think
department?
that we're fine. Cheryl and I went to the training. We brought back some material. We're going to be working with Dr. Lozay and Ms. Grady as far as working with them on, because they're the two that mostly handle the federal grants. So we'll be working together as a team to make sure that all our policies or all our procedures are in line with what the federal government is requiring. So
Excellent.
I think we're in good shape with that. So.
Thank you for the report and thank you for going to the training as well.
Yes, thank you.
Any comments or questions for Cecilia?
Sounds like we're in good shape.
And we do not need to go into executive session.
Correct.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Do I have a second?
Dang it.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote. Good night, everyone.